أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. The last masala we talked about is the one that is angry, the one who divorces his wife out of anger. Does it take place? And we said that it's of 3 types. There's severe anger, whereby a person doesn't know what he's saying or doing. That sort of person, his talaq doesn't take place. لأن he's مرفوع القلم at that time. The pen of responsibility has been lifted upon him. He's like the one that is majnoon, that is crazy, insane. The second type is the mild anger, very light anger. If he divorces his wife, khalas, that divorce takes place. And she starts her iddah and he has divorced her, at-talqa, 1 divorce out of the 3 that he's allowed. The third, and so that is also the ijma' amongst the scholars, consensus that talaq takes place. The third is if a person is angry, lakin he is not angry to the extent that he doesn't know what he's saying or doing. So he's angry, severely angry, not to the extent that he doesn't know what he's saying or doing. So if he says to his wife, I divorce you, then that divorce takes place. That divorce, close that door. That divorce takes place. Right. And the reason is because divorce always takes place with anger. There's not a situation where a person is happy and he divorces his wife. Questions after, right? Write it down, inshallah, just so you don't forget. Right. The next mas'ala is the types of talaq with regards to the sunnah and bid'ah. Types of talaq with regards to sunnah or bid'ah. In other words, types of talaq when it comes to correct talaq and incorrect talaq. The scholars divide talaq into talaq sunni and talaqun bid'i. The first is what? Talaqun sunni. And the second is talaqun bid'i. What is a talaq that is sunni? Talaq that is sunni is when a man divorces his wife tatliqa wahida, once. And for example, he says, I divorce you. And she is in one of 2 situations. The first is that she is pregnant. So he can divorce his wife once she is pregnant. And as for when her iddah is and her waiting period, that's what we're going to study in the coming lessons. Her iddah, her waiting period, when it starts, none of our business at the moment. At the moment, we want to know what is the correct time and how to divorce. The correct time and the correct situation to divorce. It is when a man divorces his wife once. He says, I divorce you. That's once. The opposite to that is he doesn't say, I divorce you 3 times. So the first one that is correct is to say, the talaq sunni, I divorce you once in a situation where she's pregnant. And it's confirmed that she's pregnant. And that's why the Messenger ﷺ said in the hadith that you've got in the matan, ثُمَّ لِيُطَلِّقَهَا طَاهِرًا, when she is طاهر, أو حاملا, or when she is pregnant. And the second scenario that is permissible to divorce her, and it's according to the sunnah, is when he divorces her once, says, I divorce you once, lakin in a state of purification in which he hasn't had intercourse with her. في طهر لم يجامعها فيه. In a state of purification when he hasn't divorced her, and when he hasn't had intercourse with her. Suratul Mas'ala. A man, obviously when a woman is going through haid, he can't have intercourse with her, طبعا. Right. When she's going through haid, he can't have intercourse with her. So his wife is on haid. Right. The 1st of Sha'ban, she's in haid. Her haid ends on the 8th of Sha'ban. Her haid ends when? The 8th of Sha'ban. And on the 8th in the evening, she has a ghusl and she prays her salah and so on. and then he divorces her on the 9th or the 10th or the 11th without having intercourse with her. Any time after she performs her ghusl, he can divorce her as long as he has not had intercourse with her. That is the meaning of في طهر لم يجامعها فيه. So مثلا, she ends her haid on the 8th of Sha'ban and he wants to divorce her. What he should do is he shouldn't have intercourse with her. And then he divorces her there and then. He can divorce her anytime after that. Obviously, before her next haid, he can divorce her anytime from that point onwards, from the 8th when she finishes her haid and she's pure, up until the next haid. Any time between that time, he can divorce her as long as he hasn't what? Had intercourse with her. If he has intercourse with her, it changes into something else that we're going to see. So the talaq sunni is the talaq that a man divorces his wife once. He doesn't say I divorce you 2 times or 3 times. He divorces her once. Anti taliq. And in one of 2 situations, either she is pregnant or in a purification that he hasn't had intercourse with her. After her haid and she becomes pure and he hasn't had intercourse with her. These are the 2 scenarios that are permissible to divorce a woman, because in both we know exactly when her iddah starts, and her iddah can start there and then. So for example, the woman وَأُولَاتُ الْأَحْمَالِ أَجَلُهُنَّ يَضَعْنَ حَمْلَهُ, that's clear, the iddah will get to, like she starts her iddah there and then. And the pregnant woman can be, you can divorce a wife that is pregnant. A woman that is pregnant can be divorced, and she'll remain as a wife up until she gives birth. Even if he divorces her in the 2nd month of nikah, of her pregnancy, and she gives birth in the 9th month, how many months is that? 7 months. She still remains his wife. So that is the talaq that is sunni. Is that understood? طيب. The next is, and the hukum of that is that talaq takes place. خلاص, بإجماع العلماء. If he divorces her once, when she's pregnant or in a purification that he hasn't had intercourse with her, that talaq is nafid, is sahih, is correct, بإجماع العلماء. طيب. The next is talaq bid'i, a talaq which is bid'i, which is not permissible to do. And that takes place in also one of 2 scenarios. Or it can be considered 3. The first is if he says to his wife, I divorce you 3 times. I divorce you 3 times. He's only allowed to divorce her what? Once. That is the talaq sunni. So the opposite to that is the talaq bid'i, which is if he says I divorce you twice or 3 times. So that is incorrect. نعم. أنت طالق طالق طالق. Or I divorce you 3 times. That is not permissible. In one go. Some people do that. A lot of people do that. Extreme hate for the woman, and maybe he's extremely angry. خلاص, he says I divorce you 3 times. طيب. That is the talaq bid'i, which is what? When he says to his wife, I divorce you 3 times. That is a talaq that is bid'i. The second talaq is the talaq that he divorces her when she's going through her menses, her haid. When she's going through her haid. And the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Ibn Umar off, radiallahu anhu, and he commanded Umar to tell him to take her back until she finishes until she becomes pure and so on. So she divorced her when she was in a state of haid. And he rebuked him for that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to divorce a woman in a state of hayd is haram. As for whether it takes place, we're going to see that. And the third thing that a divorce bid'i can consist of is to divorce her after her period ends in a purification, in a state of purification that he has performed intercourse with her. To divorce her in a state of purification that he has had intercourse with her within. Surah al-Mas'ala, a man or the wife ends her hayd on the 8th. A woman ends her hayd on the 8th. On the 9th, he has intercourse with her. On the 9th of Sha'ban, he has intercourse with her. Then what does he do? On the 10th of Sha'ban, he says, I divorce you. That is haram, it is a talaq bid'i. He has divorced her in a purification that he has intercourse with her. He has had intercourse with her. And it is impermissible. And the reason is because she can't start her hayd then. She can't start her iddah there and then. And she can't start in the next hayd as well. So it prolongs the period of the waiting period. It prolongs the waiting period. So that is impermissible. Also the Prophet ﷺ said to Ibn Umar, ثُمَّ لِيُطَلِّقْهَا طَاهِرًا. Let him divorce her whilst she is tahir. Whilst she is tahir. من غير وطئ, without obviously, يعني المقدر من غير وطئ, without having intercourse with her. طبعا if he does have intercourse with her and she is pregnant, then خلاص, he can divorce her because she is now pregnant. صح? She is now pregnant. طيب, so that is the talaq that is bid'i. طيب, so why is it incorrect? Because Allah says فَطَلِّقُوهُنَّ لِعِدَّتِهِنَّ. Divorce them in their prescribed times. And these times are not their prescribed times. So talaq bid'i is what? Who can mention the talaq bid'i? How many types? 3. The first? They're saying 3 times in one go. While she's in a state of hayd. She's in a state of hayd. She's going through her menses and he divorces her. The third? Excellent. In a state of purification, a woman, his wife being in a state of purification, like in after having performed intercourse with her. In these cases, it is impermissible to do talaq. So that is the types of talaq with regards to sunnah or bid'ah. So for the sunni, what was the sunni talaq? To divorce, 2 types. Saying it once, I divorce you once. Anti taliq. And when she's in a state of purification that he hasn't had intercourse with her, or when she is pregnant. That is the talaq that is sunni. And the talaq that is sunni, yaqa' takes place or it doesn't take place? Bittifaq al-ulama, it takes place. Because obviously it's in accordance with the sharia. Mas'ala. What about the talaq that is bid'i? Does it take place or not? Does it take place or not? So, mathalan, a man divorces his wife. A man divorces his wife whilst she's in a state of hayd. Does that take place? Or he says to his wife, mathalan, or he divorces her straight after having intercourse with her. Takes place, but the iddah doesn't start. Okay, excellent. Takes place, but it's sinful. Right. Difference of opinion amongst the scholars, like in the opinion that we're going to take, because we don't want to study all of the opinions and so on, because it's going to take time. Like in the talaq that is bid'i, it takes place. The talaq that is bid'i, it takes place. So if a man divorces his wife while she's in a state of hayd, it takes place. Or if he divorces her 3 times, that divorce takes place. As for whether it takes place 3 times or not, we're going to see that in a second. Lakin, if a man divorces his wife, says 3 times I divorce you, that talaq takes place. If he divorces her in state of hayd, the talaq also takes place. If he divorces her after having intercourse with her during that purification, then again that talaq takes place. Due to the general evidencing of the Sharia. And also the Messenger ﷺ said to Ibn Umar, Murhu falyuraji'ha. Let him take her back. Like, let him take her back. It means the divorce has taken place. For him to be told to take her back, take her back, it means that the divorce must have taken place. Otherwise, what is the point saying take it back? Take what back? She's my wife already if the talaq doesn't take place. Also, at-talaqu marratan. Ya ayyuha an-nabi idha talaqtumun nisa. All of these evidences, the umumat of the Sharia state that takes place, that divorce takes place. Also, that is a ma'siyah, sah? He is blameworthy for divorcing her in that manner, right? Right. The ma'siyah, the sin necessitates that we punish him, not that we give him a concession and a rukhsa. So in any case, it takes place. Is that understood? The talaq bid'i, does it take place? Naam. As for the iddah, we're going to see. طيب. The next mas'ala. If a man, the sunnah is that you say that a man divorces his wife once. Anti taliq. Khalas. Sah? What about if he says Anti taliqun, and he doesn't mean tawkid. He taliq, yani you're divorced. I divorce you, and he doesn't mean, for example, she doesn't say and he says divorce you. She says I can't hear you and divorce you. Not that. Not when he's just repeating it so she can hear. He means I divorce you. That is talaq, that is sunni or bid'i. Bid'i, it is incorrect. Lakin the question is, we also know that it takes place. That falls into talaq. Right. The question is, does it fall into talaq 3 times? Is that part of his other 2 strikes as well? So all 3 strikes out? Or does it only take place once? 3 times? Because he said it 3 times. Right? Once, because the umur bi maqasidiha. His maqsad is that he divorces her 3 times. That's his intention. He said it once. I divorce you. He intends to say it 3 times. Right. Once because she hasn't done her iddah. Okay, right. Once because you're not allowed to do that. Yeah, but haid, divorcing her in her haid, you're not allowed to do that. But we said it takes place. فيه قولان. Why would you change it to once? That she has to get married. No. There's a difference of opinion amongst the scholars, okay? And that difference of opinion is that if a man says to his wife, I divorce you 3 times, Suratul Mas'ala, does it become 3 times whereby he cannot remarry her until she marries someone else? Or do we say to him that is 1 talaq? That is 1 talaq. There are 2 opinions. The first opinion, and that is the qawl of the Jumhur al-Ulama, the majority of scholars, which is it takes place as 3 talaqs. So if a man says to his wife, Anti taliq, or talaqtuki, I divorce you, it takes place 3 goes. Therefore, he can never remarry her unless she gets married to someone else, as we shall see inshallah in the coming lessons. Right. So that is one opinion, and that is the majority of the scholars. And the second opinion is that it is muharram, he's done something that is haram, like in that talaq only takes place once. That talaq in reality only takes place once. I haven't mentioned it. 1 second. So what is the second opinion? Meaning if he says to his wife 3 times, I divorce you, it only counts as 1. طيب. When did this mas'ala come about? During the Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he mentions that during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, talaq was considered as, or if a person said, I divorce you to his wife 3 times, it was considered as one. It was always considered as one. And it was like that during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the time of Abu Bakr and the first 2 years of the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu, where it would be counted as one. Then during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the people started to say it excessively. Everyone would say to his wife, I divorce you 3 times, I divorce you 3 times, I divorce you 3 times. Then Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, as a punishment of the people, he said that we're going to count it as 3 times. We're going to count it as 3 strikes. So this was something that they had time, and they had time over it. But they refused to take their time, and they forced themselves to say 3 times. And they harmed themselves by saying, we're going to divorce her, my wife, I divorce her 3 times. Therefore, as a punishment and as a deterrent from saying, I divorce you 3 times, Umar radiallahu anhu said, Amdayna alayhim, or namdi alayhim. We count it as 3 divorces. So that is the asl of the mas'ala. Wallahu a'lam, the stronger opinion, or what is closer, is the opinion that it doesn't take place, it only takes place as one. It only counts as one. It only counts as one, because that's how it was during the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the time of Abu Bakr and the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the first 2 years. And that is the opinion of many of the Salaf, from them Ali radiallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abdullah ibn Abbas in one narration, Zubayr ibn Awam radiallahu anhu, Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu, and some of the Salaf, the Tabi'een. So it counts as how many? 1. However, this can go back to ijtihad in terms of looking at the person himself and looking at the maslahah of the people. Just like Umar did radiallahu anhu. And that shows the siyasah shari'iyah that he had. Where Umar radiallahu anhu, his way of governing was upon wisdom and according to the need of the people. So if we find a person, or we find a group of people, or in a certain location where they use it excessively, to the extent that everyone that wants to divorce his wife, he says, I divorce you 3 times, I divorce you 3 times, then as a form of punishment, the qadi has the haqq to say, طيب, your wife is divorced 3 times, and you cannot remarry her until she marries someone else. طيب. So that is the mas'ala of the talaq, the talaq of saying 3 times. The talaq of saying, I divorce you 3 times. طيب. The next mas'ala is, what is the iddah anyway? What is the waiting period for a woman that is going through a haid? And we're going to study that next lesson, inshallah. Lakin, the last mas'ala of this lesson is where the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, نعم. So can you see where it says, أمسك وهذا دليل على أنه لا يحل له يطلقها وهي حائض. So that part of the hadith, just after the hadith of Ibn Umar, he says it is not permissible to divorce her when she is in her haid. أو في دهر وطئ فيه, or during a purification between the 2 haids, a purification that he has had intercourse with her. That is not permissible either. إلا إن تبين حملها, unless it's clear that now she is pregnant. So that is when it's not permissible to divorce. The next title is, what wordings necessitate talaq? بماذا يقع الطلاق من الألفاظ? بماذا يقع الطلاق من الألفاظ? The Shaykh says rahimahullah, يقع الطلاق بكل لفظ دل عليه. Talaq takes place in every word that points towards it. Every word that you can understand that this person has divorced his wife, then that counts as divorce. من صريح لا يفهم منه سوى الطلاق كاللفظ الطلاق وما تصرف منه وما كان مثله وكناية إذا نوى بها طلاق. طيب, the Sheikh is saying two things now. أو دلت القرينة على ذلك. طيب, the Sheikh is saying two things now. The first is, in terms of the wordings that a man uses for talaq, they are of two types: sarih and kinaya. Clear words and words that are not clear. Clear words, talaq sarih, and kinaya, words that are not sarih. They can mean talaq and they can mean not talaq. They may not mean talaq. So from the clear words, the Shaykh says, kalaffi talaq, like the words of talaq. That is clear cut. A man says to his wife, talaqtuki, or I divorce you, or in any other language, like in that meaning, then that talaq is clear, because that is lafdun sarih, that is a clear word. It takes place and it doesn't require an intention. It doesn't require intention. So he can't, so for مثلا, a man says to us, طلقتك, he says to his wife, طلقتك. And she comes to us in the mahkama and we say, what did he say to you? And he's there and she says, he said, طلقتك, I divorce you. He cannot turn around and say, la, I intended something else. I wanted to scare her. He can't say that. Why? Because the word of talaq is what? It's clear, it's sarih. Talaq, or I divorce you. طيب. Then the Shaykh says the second is what kinaya. It is kinaya, which is not clear. It points towards it, but it is not clear. إذا نوى بها الطلاق, if he intends talaq. If he intends talaq. So the words that are not clear when it comes to talaq, the only way that talaq can count is if what? If he intends. And the Shaykh says, أو دلت القرينة إلى ذلك, or there's an indication that he meant that. Like in some of the scholars say that the qarina is not looked at. The indication is not looked at. Surah al-Mas'ala. A man says to his wife, they're having an argument. And he says, go to your family home. Or he says, I've had enough of you. Or I never want to see you again. Is that clear with regards to talaq? La, it can mean talaq and it can mean not talaq. That goes back to his intention. If he intends to divorce her, then khalas, that is a talaq. So he says to her, go and ilhaqi bi ahlik. Ilhaqi bi ahliki, yani go and join your family. Or go to your family home. Or I've had enough of you. These sorts of words, they're not clear in talaq. If he says these words, and she comes to us in the mahkama and says, he said to me, ilhaqi bi ahlik, go and join your family. We can't say to him, since you said that she's divorced. We say to him, what did you mean by this? What did you mean by this? If he says, I only meant, because I said it because I don't want to see her face for the rest of the week. Or I wanted to get a breather. Khalas, we say that is not talaq. Like if he says, yeah, I intended to divorce her because I've had enough of her, then that is when it becomes talaq. Then that is when it becomes talaq. طيب. And the evidence for that, that the fact that the intention counts, is when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ibnatu Joan, a woman married the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam married this woman. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married this woman, and then she entered into the home of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she said to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "A'udhu billahi mink, I seek refuge in Allah from you." And then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لَقَدْ عُذْتِ بِعَظِيمٍ إِلْحَقِي بِأَهْلِكِ. Verily you have sought refuge in the Great One, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِلْحَقِي بِأَهْلِكِ. Go and join your family. That was counted as a talaq. That was counted as a talaq. However, in the hadith of Ka'b bin Malik radiallahu anhu, when they stayed back, him and two other companions stayed back from Ghazwat Tabuk, the Battle of Tabuk, all of the companions made the hijrah of him. And with regards to his wife, he said exactly these words: "Ilhaqi bi ahliki, fatakunina indahum hatta yaqbid Allahu aw yaqdi Allahu fi hadha al-amr." Go and join your family until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges in this affair of ours. And that wasn't considered as talaq. Because when his bara'ah came and Allah freed him and all their companions from blame, she came back to him as his wife. In summary, the words that a person uses for talaq are of how many types? 2. What are they? Clear and unclear. Clear words. For example, I divorce you. Does divorce take place in this instance? Yes, talaq does take place. What about the second type? Without the second type is wordings that are not clear, that they don't clearly show divorce. However, if there's an intention of divorce, then the divorce takes place. What about if he meant divorce, like and he just changes his mind? We take what's apparent, like in the hukum is that he is with his wife illegally and she's divorced. So a person can't say, well, I tricked the qadi because he thought I meant that. No. Regardless of what the qadi says, if he intended divorce, then he's with his wife illegally, illegitimately. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. طيب. So that is with regards to the wordings that are used. The next masala, the Shaykh says, وَيَقَعُ الطَّلَاقُ مُنَجَّزًا أَوْ مُعَلَّقًا عَلَى شَرْطٍ كَقَوْلِهِ إِذَا جَاءَ الْوَقْتُ الْفُلَانِ فَأَنْتِ طَالِقٌ فَمَتَى وُجِدَ الشَّرْطُ الَّذِي عَلَّقَ عَلَيْهِ طَلَاقُ وَقَعَ. Before that, what about kitaba? Writing to his wife, I divorce you, or whatever. If we find his writing and text message, for example, does that take place? If he clearly says, I divorce you. If it knows it can't be fabricated, that's his number, for example, it's sent from his number. Has to be wording. Okay. He says, I divorce you in the text message. Okay. It still takes place. Why? Okay. The reality is that kitaba takes the ruling of divorce kinaya. It is not clear. Why did we say kinaya? Because anyone can write that. Number one, anyone can write that. Number two, he might write that. He's thinking of it, he writes it, but he doesn't want to say it to her, he doesn't send it to her. Or in another example, he might be practicing his handwriting. زوجتي مثلا, he's got a new pen, he says زوجتي طارق زوجتي طارق زوجتي طارق. As someone takes it from him, says, look, he's divorced you, I can now marry you because he divorced you. So that kitaba, it has to be accompanied with intention. That divorce has to be accompanied with intention. If he says, yes, I intended to divorce her, then that is divorce. If not, then that is not considered divorce. However, again, it goes back to a tadayyun between him and Allah Jalla wa Ala. It goes between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. So that is the first one. Oh, so afwan, that is the masala. Also, by way of phone, if he's talking to her over the phone, then khalas. That takes place. That is clear. If he says, I divorce you, we're not going to say, what did you mean by that? The phone is phone. As long as she can hear him. And it is him. طيب. The Shaykh says, وَيَقَعُ طَلَاقُ مُنَجَّزًا أَوْ مُعَلَّقًا. Divorce from another angle, in terms of it taking place or not, is of 2 types. Of 2 types. Which is, it is on. Naam, it is of, well, it is on 2 types. The first is munajjaz. Munajjaz means when it takes place immediately, without any connection. It is not connected to anything. He says, you're divorced. He didn't connect it to anything. He just said, you're divorced. Khalas, end of. That takes place there and then. The second type is الطلاق المعلق. الطلاق that is connected to something. الطلاق that is connected to something. For example, the Shaykh says, إذا جاء الوقت الفلاني. If Ramadan comes, then I'm going to divorce you. Or on the 1st of Shawwal after Eid, I'm going to divorce you. Or I'm going to divorce you on Eid day. Fancy Allah. The Shaykh says, فَمَتَى وُجِدَ الشَّرْطُ, whenever you find that condition, الَّذِي عَلَّقَ عَلَيْهِ طَلَاقٌ, whenever the condition is found, وَقَعَ, the talaq takes place. The talaq takes place. طيب. And that is of different types. When he says, if this happens, the condition in place in the condition is of three types. If he says, I will divorce you when it rains money. I will definitely divorce you when it rains money, wallah. That is talaq, right? And he has attributed to, or connected it to something. Like in that thing he is connected it to. Is it not pure? Is it not impossible? I mean, it's impossible. Or he says to his wife, I will definitely divorce you when I go back to being 15 years old. I will divorce you when my shabab comes back to me. That divorce obviously doesn't take place, because the meaning of that is meaning I'm never going to divorce you. The second is when he connects it to something, to a certain time, that he has no say in. That he has no say in. For example, he says, for example, he says, I'm going to divorce you on the 1st of Shawwal. I'm going to divorce you at sunrise. I'm going to divorce you on the 1st of Ramadan. These things that he has connected that divorce to, they are things that are not connected to him, that he has no say in it. That means it definitely takes place. That talaq takes place. That talaq takes place. The third type is when he connects it to something that happens in the mustaqbal, something that happens in the future. Something that happens or that will take place in the future. And that is connected to one of our actions, his action or her action. For example, he says, Wallahi, if you go to your family home, I'm going to divorce you. Or if you go shopping, Wallahi, you're divorced. Or if you leave the home, then Wallahi, you're divorced. Then Wallahi, you're divorced. And that third type is of three types itself. That third type is of three types. Either he genuinely intends for it to be a divorce. He intends for it to be a divorce. For example, he says, Wallahi, if you leave the home, I'm going to divorce you. And then she leaves the home. Khalas, that divorce takes place. Because the mu'allaq, the thing that it is connected to, has taken place now. Wallahi, if you go to your family home, you're divorced. Khalas, if she goes to her family home, then that divorce takes place. Right? The second is, if he says that in order to prevent her from going by way of threatening, just to threaten her, just to scare her. So he says, Wallah, if you go to your family home, I'm going to divorce you. Like his intention is for her not to go. For her not to go. But he doesn't want to divorce her. He has no intention of divorcing her. But here, if she does go to her family home, or if she does do the thing that he connected it to, then it is not a divorce. It becomes yameen. It becomes an oath that he has taken or he has sworn by. And he has to expiate kafaratul yameen. He has to expiate. Either by freeing a slave, by feeding 10 poor people, by clothing them, And if he's not able to do any of that, then he fasts 3 days. So that is connecting to something which will take place or could take place, but if it takes place, he's only doing it in order to scare her. What is the third possibility? That it could mean he didn't have a specific intention. It could mean he did not mean to scare her and he did not mean for the talaq to take place. When you ask him, he says, I don't know. That goes back to his intention. That goes back to his intention. Or you can get rid of that third category and just leave it as the first two categories, because they are a lot clearer. If he meant it, that if I divorce you, if you go out, then khalas, it takes place. If he didn't mean it and he just wanted to scare her and she still does it, then he does the kafaratul yameen. He does kafaratul yameen. So divorce from that angle, or in terms of it taking place quickly, immediately, the time frame that takes place is of how many types? 2. What are they? Munajjaz and mu'allaq. Munajjaz means it takes place immediately. Mu'allaq is when it is connected to something, sah? And mu'allaq is of how many types? 3 types. If he connects it to something that is impossible, in reality, that divorce doesn't take place. Because he means, I'm not going to divorce you. Secondly, if he connects it to something that will always take place and he has no control over, when the sun sets, wallahi, I'm divorcing you. Khalas, when the sun sets, divorce takes place. You can't hold it back. The third is if he connects it to something in his control or her control, within his or her control, within his or her hands, and that is of 2 types. If he intended to actually divorce her, if she does that thing, then khalas, that divorce takes place. If he did not intend to divorce her, he just wanted to scare her and threaten her, and she does it, then he does kafaratul yameen. And on that note, inshallah, we'll finish. If there are any questions, tafaddalu.
وقل رب زدني علما